Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby, the show where we discover the silver lining in life's most difficult stories. I'm your host, Toby Dorr. Hi, this is Toby, and I'm so glad to have you here on this episode of Fierce Conversations with Toby. My guest today is Michael Thompson, who's an award-winning author and an illustrator from Northern Virginia. And in talking just now, before we started recording, I discovered he lives in the same little area that I live in, Bristow, Virginia. So who would have thought that?
Yeah.
I met Michael at a Barnes & Noble. He was doing a book signing there, and we talked. I did a book signing there when my book was released, and it's one of my favorite places to go. And so we connected, and that's how I got Michael on my podcast. But I think Michael is kind of unique in that he began his career at 13 years old.
That's right.
With the publication of his action-packed Chicken Boy series. And he's just kept going. And the coolest thing, I think, is that he illustrates his own work. So he isn't just a writer, he's also an artist and an illustrator. And I think that's so cool. So, Michael, welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, I'm thrilled to have you. And before we get started, I ask a question that's kind of totally not related to anything deep and profound. And that is, what's your favorite color and why?
I like green. Green's my favorite color.
Yeah.
It has some symbolic associations with hope, and I just think it's very lush and vibrant, and I like a nice emerald green. That's a nice color.
I love that. Yeah, I like it when people put shades to their favorite color.
Yeah.
So, as you can probably tell, my favorite color is pink, but
Yep.
no surprise there. So, Michael, what's the hardest decision that you've ever had to make?
Ooh, the hardest decision. Well, becoming a full-time author is kind of a scary decision. It's not exactly a traditional job, and you wear a lot of hats. I'm independently published, and there are quite a lot of different duties that go into that. And so deciding whether to sort of partner up and go with a publisher or try to do it on my own was quite a decision. And coming out of college, I had been self-publishing since I was 13, and I decided to stay the course. And
I think that's great. Where'd you go to college?
I went to George Mason University.
Here in Manassas?
They have it was mostly on the Fairfax campus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Yep.
They have a great gym there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know them for their gym, so that's pretty cool. I found I had a publisher publish my book, and they took care of a lot of things that I didn't have to worry about, like editing and cover design.
Certainly, yeah.
However, there was still, you cannot, as an author, walk away from marketing.
No.
You just can't. And I was so surprised once my book was published to find out my work had just begun.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to do to keep your book out there in the minds of readers and grow your community and your audience. So, I think,
marketing is hard. It's a full-time job in itself.
It truly is. That's for sure. So, tell us about a significant event in your life that knocked you down, and how did you pick yourself up?
Well, when I was very young, I was always creating from a very, very young age. And I was always drawing in class and creating all kinds of different characters. There were epic battles filling the margins of my notebooks. I couldn't help myself. And some of my teachers didn't really like that. When I got into third grade, my third grade teacher really didn't like it. And I was getting in trouble quite a lot. Even after class, at one point when we were waiting for the bus, I had a friend ask me to draw one of my characters, and I drew it, and I was handing it to him, and then in the middle of handing it to him, it was snatched out of my hand, and she ripped it up, and she said, "This is a distraction," and threw it over my face like confetti. And I couldn't understand why it was such a problem, and I couldn't help myself. I got sent to summer school because of it. And,
wow.
However, it was at summer school that I met the greatest teacher that I had ever had, Mr. A. And I sat down, I folded my hands, I said to myself, I'm not going to draw. And I had to control myself. And then my teacher said, okay, we're going to make our own comic book. And
Oh,
it was like,
wow.
that was the first assignment. I was like, "I get to do this?" And
Yeah.
so my mom contacted the principal and had me transferred into his class for the 4th grade. And it was there that I created Chicken Boy,
Oh,
which was my
wow.
first ever character. And so a prime component of Mr. A's class was creativity, and he had something called the writing journal, and that was a significant portion of the class. So every day we would come and we would sit down and we would either write a short story, make a comic, create a character with character bio and like bubbles and like create like a backstory and stuff, and then we would go up and present it to him. And so I just started filling up that notebook, and I still have it. Actually, I got it right here.
Oh,
I
wow.
keep it in under
That's
plastic
so
because it's an
cool.
ancient relic now. Um,
Yes.
and this is the first ever picture of Chicken Boy, which I glued
Oh,
on the
wow.
cover there. And
That's so
so,
cool.
yeah, and I was inspired by this animal rescue show. I loved animals because I was a big fan of Looney Tunes when I was a kid,
Mhm.
and I love superheroes. I love Marvel. Spider-Man was a big favorite character of mine. And so I wanted to make my own animal superhero. So I started combining, like drawing, cartooning different animals wearing capes and seeing what felt the best. And I was watching this animal rescue show on Animal Planet. I don't remember the name of the show, but they had a baby king vulture. If you see Chicken Boy, he doesn't quite look like a chicken. And
Ah.
I just thought he looked kind of funny. He had this big beak and these big old feet that look too
Uh-huh.
big for his body, and these puffy white feathers. And I thought something struck me like
Mhm.
lightning in my cartoonist mind, and I had to cartoon him wearing a cape. I didn't think Vulture Boy sounded very good, so I named
Yeah.
him Chicken Boy. And this is the latest Chicken Boy book, which came out not too long ago. And so you can see there's our titular hero there, Chicken Boy.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. And you know what is so beautiful about that story? It's the one thing that I'm always telling the people that I work with. So many times something negative happens in our life, and all we can do is think about how terrible that negative thing was and feel like a victim and just like wallow in the terribleness of this thing. But there's always a silver lining. And you
definitely.
found that silver lining, and it really was like bigger than a silver lining. It was your whole future.
Yeah,
And
it
so
changed the course
I
of my
love
life.
it. Yeah, I love that. I just love that. That's so awesome. Um, so I was going to ask you who's been your most important mentor.
That's definitely Mr. A.
I was thinking probably so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely one great teacher can change everything for a kid. And so he was wonderful. And I've got a very supportive family as well. My grandfather, I loved reading my stories with him, and he had a great voice.
Oh,
And
how
so I
fun.
always really enjoyed writing something just so I could hear it read in his voice. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I really enjoyed when I was writing my first novel, my first big young adult book, World of the Orb. Um, a significant portion of the process involved because I was a teenager when I started that one,
Mhm.
and bringing him chunks of chapters at a time and just sitting and then reading it. So it was like the ultimate like write what you love sort of situation because I was hearing the type of story that I always wished existed in my
Mhm.
grandfather's voice, and so we would read it and edit it. A kind of a
I
fun
love
story with
that.
that actually because he passed away when I was um, in the middle of college, and so the book hadn't come out yet. The book came out shortly after I graduated college, and I was doing some of the final edits. And there was this one I had like a placeholder thing. So this is a very World of the Orb here. This is my young adult novel. This is about a couple
Mhm.
of friends who discover the hidden world the museum was trying to keep
Oh,
secret, and they're sent on a harrowing treasure hunt across all these strange lands to
oh,
find Earth
wow.
again.
Cool.
And I had so this was a big world building exercise, and I had this currency in the world, and I had just kind of a placeholder name for the currency. It was like kind of like your classic gold doubloon type looking thing, and
Mhm.
I just called them pieces. And I didn't know what to call them yet, but I wanted something unique. And I had found when it came about that time to do those final polishing up edits, and I was like, I still need a name for the currency. And I found a stack of my grandfather's edits, and he had and I found in his handwriting he had he had circled that, and he agreed that that should be something something different. And he put of and I think he meant to write of like silver or something, but he abbreviated it Civ, SIV, and I was like, that's going to be the name of
Wow.
the currency. So
Yeah,
so I named
that's
the
so
little
cool.
treasure pieces Civ in
Uh-huh.
World of the Orb.
That's pretty cool that your grandpa's a part of that. I love that story. You know, we actually live with my stepson and his family. So my grandson and granddaughter, live upstairs, and we have a separate apartment down here. And it has been beautiful spending so much time with the grandkids. Well, my granddaughter, she's in fourth grade this year.
Okay.
When she was in second grade, I was working on my book, and it was, getting to the final edits, and she wanted to write a book. So she sat down and wrote a book, and it was on paper. And, I said, well, if you're going to write a book, let's use this nice paper. And so she drew these pictures and hand wrote it, and I kind of bound it for her.
Oh,
And
that's
she took it
wonderful.
to school, and her teacher was just in awe. And she had Elisa read it to the whole class. And so Elisa's working on a couple other books on my computer. She'll come down here and say, Grandma, I'm going to start a new book. And so the one she's working on now is called, I don't know, something about Raisin's a rabbit. Fluffy raisin or something. I don't know. But
Oh, that's
she's
wonderful.
she's so creative, and she draws all the time. And I think that should be encouraged. And you've just given me the motivation to encourage it even more, because luckily for her, her teachers have encouraged her in her drawing and
Yeah.
her writing and her reading. So I feel bad that you were not encouraged, but it turned out for the best. It was put you on the path you meant to be on.
Yeah, yeah. It wouldn't have happened the same way
Yeah.
if things
Isn't
didn't
that
line
great?
up that way. And when I was 9 years old, we actually did a little class book as well. And so they had some type of service where they would they found some group that would bind together. So every kid in the class made a short story, and they bound them
Yes.
together hardcover style.
Yes.
And that was really special. So maybe that could be suggested
I think that they
as a
might have
project.
done that too. I was going to see if I could find their little book. I think I have it in this tray of stuff, but
Cool.
it it was just so awesome. I'm just going to look real quick and
Absolutely.
see what I got. I don't. I wish I thought of it ahead, but I don't see it here. So
It's a cool thing. I have so many stories even now where I, look back at old like little drawings and things that I kept from my writing journals and
Mhm.
sketchbooks. And
Yes,
so it's good to have that and keep that for reference. It's the
I
foundation,
just
population
yeah,
of your imagination.
I just think it's so beautiful, and I was so proud of her, and I just encourage her all the time to
That's
keep
awesome.
writing, keep writing, and so she does. Um, I love that story. Well, and I was also going to ask you about a turning point in your life that propelled you in a new direction. I think we've covered that, but is there another moment in your life that really put you into publishing?
Well, I think something that was really sort of solidifying for me just recently. I got to return to the school that at which I created Chicken Boy
Oh,
as a guest speaker for their Read Across America event. And this was very shortly before the lockdowns in
uh-huh.
2020. And when I arrived there, now I had released the Chicken Boy books, the original three, and they're in slightly a different format than how they're going right
Mhm.
now. So
Yeah.
these big sort of magazine shaped ones.
Yeah.
When I had released those, I was a teenager, 13, 15, and 17 is when the first three came out. And uh, the kids were reading it like it was any other book off the shelf. I donated copies to their school library, and I returned to Mr. Erisich's class every single year
Great.
to
Cool,
talk to the
cool.
kids about writing and publishing and creating characters.
Uh-huh.
When
What
I
school
came,
was that, by the way?
it was Cedar Point.
Oh,
Um,
my grandkids go to Bristol Run,
okay,
so,
okay.
yeah.
And when I arrived in for this particular Read Across America event, the kids, the students, had voted on their favorite literary characters to be featured in a mural on the library wall. And
Wow.
when I arrived, Chicken Boy and all the Chicken Boy characters were painted up on the library wall.
How exciting.
Yeah, I
That's
thought
pretty
that was
cool.
incredible.
That's pretty cool. So did your grandfather know you were publishing a book? You said
Yeah,
he
yeah, I had
before
published,
it was done, but
yeah, he got to see the Chicken Boy books when those were
oh,
published,
good.
for sure, and World of the Orb was the one that I was working on a lot in high school, and I didn't finish it until I graduated college
Mhm.
because that was a lot of work. And so,
Yes.
but as
Yeah.
soon as I graduated, I went full speed and finally
Mhm.
finally got it out. It was a big undertaking.
That's excellent. I
Yeah.
love that story. I love that story. So, was there ever a time in your life that you felt imprisoned, and what did you do to liberate yourself?
Yeah, I what immediately comes to mind was during the lockdowns. It was
Mm.
quite quite isolating. I mean, being an author is kind of an isolating job already.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I kind of, I feel like a cave dweller when I'm working on my projects. But when I go out and I get to share them with people, it's it's energizing, and it's electrifying. I get
Yeah.
to share it with people who love the stories and cherish the characters as much as I do. And I had this amazing schedule that was going to happen, and then in a blink, all of that
Yes.
got canceled.
Yes.
And so I was like, wow. So I had to completely switch gears and focus solely on the production aspect of what I do, so that I could and I thought, okay, if I pour myself into that, then by the time all of this is over, I can really have a good be ahead of myself. I've
Mm.
never been like ahead on writing,
Yeah. Right.
and so I noticed that when you write in a time of stress or difficulty or something, you kind of impart that into the character's own struggles. And
Mhm.
so as you're writing these stories and you're seeing people face not necessarily the same things that you're going through, um, but symbolically, you see them conquering and triumphing. It can help you sort of get through those
Mhm.
hard times. World of the Orb is a lot like that. The main character, Marvin, deals with a lot of self doubt. And this book is sort of symbolically about conquering self doubt, because he when he goes into the new alternate world of Encarta, he discovers he has powers there that he didn't have on Earth. And
Ah,
so it's sort of the theme of the humble becomes exalted, right? So
interesting. I like that. So I'm curious about your writing process. It seems to me like you have that notebook where you did the chicken boy stuff a lot. Um, do you, when you start to write on a new project, do you like to write in a notebook with a pen, or do you sit down at the computer and write?
yeah, I definitely I carried forward that writing notebook thing
Mhm.
into my official process as an author, and I really like drawing the characters first,
Mhm.
especially for these fantasy books that I do. And in the current series that I have going right now, the Winslow Hoffner series, which is based on folklore and mythology and cryptozoology, I like drawing the monsters, and so I
Uh-huh.
get a really immersive sense of what things look like and how they operate, and creating sort of the imagined evolution and biology of these fantasy creatures before I go into it. And sometimes I do like to write by hand. I like to sort of change it up. I enjoy typing, but sometimes I like to escape from the computer
Yeah.
and get out and sit outside for a little while,
Mhm.
enjoy the fresh air, and write a few sentences, and that sort of like breaks through the ice
Mhm.
a little bit, and then I can dart up here and
Yeah,
continue.
my memoir really started in a series of journals that I had.
Hmm.
And I have always said, and I don't know why, I just feel like your hand's connected to your heart. And when you write with your hand, stuff comes out you don't even know is there. And when you sit at a computer, then it becomes logical and you're working from your head. And you miss a lot of the cool nuggets that are hidden.
Hmm.
And then I came across this research that said, when we write a letter of the alphabet, we form it stroke by stroke. And that process of production involves pathways in the brain that go near or through parts that manage emotion.
Wow.
So that doesn't happen when you type. You aren't using that part of your brain. So, I mean, that was true. There is a difference between writing by hand and typing. It
That's
does come from
fascinating.
a different
Yeah.
place. Yeah. And I just love that. And then there was a 2017 study that found that brain regions associated with learning are more active when people complete a task by hand
Mm.
as opposed to a keyboard. So they said the authors of that study said that writing by hand may promote deep encoding of new information in ways that keyboarding writing does not. So, and when a person writes by hand, they have to invest a lot of time and energy into what they're doing. And the more thought goes into it, I think. So I really think it's a powerful writing tool. And, people ask me how to get started with their book. And I said, pick up a pen and just start writing. Because when you stare at a blank computer and wonder, what am I going to type? It's just a roadblock, really.
Yeah,
So,
that's fascinating. I remember I continued to doodle all the way through into college. And so my college friends would, look over and there would be like a gigantic sea monster, they'd take
oh,
up the bottom half of
yes.
the page. And they're
Yes.
like, how do you, how do you manage to
Uh-huh.
get the grades, decent grades while like having this? And it's funny because I I remembered certain sections that I took notes on, like in association with what doodle was on the page.
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's right next to the castle. I was like, oh, that's right next to
Yes,
the Leviathan.
yes. I can relate to that. I can find old notebooks or homework from when I was in grade school, and I can remember a show that was on TV or something my dad was saying just because I don't know, somehow it's
Yeah, it's
connected.
fascinating. Yeah,
I think it's pretty cool.
that is
Be
cool.
kind of cool to explore that a lot more. So, what is one question you wish I'd asked?
Hmm. Let's see. Well, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about my cryptid book here, the Winslow
Let's
Hoffner
do.
series. So
Yeah.
this is my latest series, and the new one just came out. This just came out at the end of last year. Winslow
Ah.
Hoffner's High Sailing Adventures. I'm still doing all the different artwork here. It's a
Mhm.
different style than my Chicken Boy books. But
I love
Winslow
artwork.
is a folkloric fantasy on the high seas about cryptids, sea monsters, epic urban legends that few have beheld. But there's one man who happens to have seen them all, Winslow Hoffner, the gallant fisherman.
Oh.
And so this really combined my love of, because I got into journalism when I was young, and so I enjoyed telling other people's stories, but I also obviously love creative writing. And so it started as some short stories in high school, and then later on in college I added some more, and I thought it was going to be a collection of short stories. But then as I was putting it together, I realized it wanted to be its own stories, and it's blossomed into this incredible thing. So lately I've been attending a lot of cryptozoology conferences. And
What
so,
is cryptozoology?
good question. Okay, so cryptozoology, the prefix crypto means hidden, and
Oh,
zoology is the study of animals, right? So this is the study of hidden animals, such as the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, things of that nature. And in this one, we focus entirely on the aquatic aspect of cryptozoology. So we have
wow.
these unknown creatures, like the center creature here is named Gambo. And this
Huh.
was based on a creature that washed ashore in 1983 in the Gambia. And they weren't sure exactly what it was. It could have been a prehistoric dolphin or the last of the mosasaurs. They weren't sure. But before anyone had a chance to scientifically document it, the body disappeared. It said that the head was sold to a tourist and the rest of it was
Oh
buried in the
my
sand.
god.
And I thought,
Wow.
well, this is fascinating. I can do whatever I want with this thing.
Mhm.
And so I turned it into this fire breathing fish. And this story
Wow.
came about. I was assigned to write a short story I think it was my sophomore year of high school. I want to say could have been junior, but
Mhm.
I had this. It came to me with a single line, and that's kind of usually the case
Uh-huh.
with the writing process. It's either a single image or a single line, and in this case, it was the first line that turned out to be the first line of the book, which was Winslow saying, "Have you ever stared straight into the eyes of death and
Oh,
scoffed?"
I
And
love
so,
it.
I made a note on my computer. I put it away. I didn't know what he was talking about yet, but my foundational interest in cryptozoology bubbled up. And when it came time to write that short story, I thought, I'm gonna do a cryptid sea adventure. And
Huh.
so it's about this fisherman who sees these unbelievable things in the water,
Uh-huh.
and it's about skepticism versus magical belief, and so that's kind of what the story's about. And there's great portraits of all the different monsters in there, all based on real world sightings of unexplained monsters.
Wow. I love that they're based on real world.
Yeah. And I did a great audiobook, which I narrated myself, which is available on many different platforms, Audible, iTunes, Amazon, and most recently, or very soon, I should say, Spotify.
Uh-huh.
Onto Spotify. So you can listen to the first book, Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, and you can pick up the paperback of Winslow Hoffner's High Sailing Adventures, where we dive into how Winslow's adventures with these creatures all began. And so this just came out, and you can see that on my website on michaelthompsonbooks.com.
Yeah, and I will put in the show notes your website and the name of how you spell Winslow Hoffner, because I have that. I think that's excellent.
Yeah.
I narrated my audiobook too, and I just
nice.
really drawn to audiobooks that the author reads.
I love that. Yeah, that's my favorite.
I think you get some more out of it. You get something, because you get their essence in the story. So I just love that. I'm going to have to check that out. Excellent. So what's next for you? How many books have you written to date?
I've written and released 7 so far.
Wow.
And coming up next, I'm going to be re-illustrating and re-releasing my first 3 Chicken Boy books for the Chicken Boy anniversary editions. And the special thing about that is from to date, like back when I created it in 4th grade, will mark 20 years since the creation of the character.
Wow.
And so it's going to be really special. They're all going to be this size, which is a more industry standard size.
Yes.
When I started out, self-publishing was brand new. And so it's like the size of computer paper. Now it's going to be.
I'm curious what you put your books in to publish them. What tool do you use?
I use KDP, which is the one that Amazon uses. I use many different tools. I'm non-exclusive, so I use as many different things as I can. Ingram is another one.
Yeah, but I mean the tool on your computer that you put them in.
Oh, that I type it into?
Yeah.
Just Word. Yeah, it's just Word.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I use Adobe InDesign, and I create these kinds of workbooks, and they're pretty graphical. These are the size of them, but they got a lot of graphical stuff in them, and I did them in Adobe InDesign.
That's a good choice for InDesign, for that type of thing.
So it seems like a tool that would work really well for what you're doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious.
Yeah.
There's just so many opportunities out there. There's so many tools at your disposal that anybody that feels called to write a book doesn't have a reason to not just do it, because you can self-publish it, you can self-write it, you can self-edit it, you can self-illustrate it, there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, if a story's coming to you, I always say that's a sign that it's meant to be told. So
I love that. I just love that. I'm so glad our paths have crossed, because I feel really inspired. I have a book in my head that I'm trying to get out, and it's really graphically based, and so I might have to set up a meeting with you and get some feedback from you.
Sure.
So I'm not an artist, but I am I do have a master's degree in digital design, so I can, use the computer to make pretty things, but I wish I could draw. Maybe I could if I tried, but I don't know how. So, is there a question that you'd like to ask me?
Ooh. So you're an author too, you say. What's your writing process like? How does that work for you? And do you ever find yourself sort of pouring yourself into your characters, or I guess in your case it's more nonfiction, right?
I wrote a memoir.
Right. So what was that like?
Writing a memoir, and it was about a really difficult part of my life, and it was exhausting because you have to go back into all that and relive it and feel it, and at the end of the day, my husband would say to me, "Where are you now?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm on suicide watch." And he'd go, "Oh, I'll be glad when you get through that part," because he could tell, because I was there too, even though I wasn't literally there. But when you go back and you write those things, it puts you in that moment, and it's difficult. I would love to write a fictional book, but I don't know. I don't know if I think I'm really more of a nonfiction person, and I've got so many ideas for different books, and I
Right.
love journals and planners. I want to go into that area. So I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I've got 2 books I'm working on, and of course the podcast that I started, and then I'm in 2024 I'm going to be working on a 3-day summit for women. That's not digital. It'll be an in-person summit where we really get into emotional intelligence and self-esteem
Hmm.
and purpose. So, I'm really drawn to those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just, yeah,
That's fantastic. Well,
yeah.
I'm really glad that our paths crossed. You showed up right. I think it was right after I sold out, so I was
You
packing
sold
up.
your last book and you packed out and you said, "Hi, well, I
Yeah.
just sold my last book." I said, "That is awesome."
and
Yeah,
and you just showed up. So I really like serendipitous things
I
like
do
that. I think it was
too.
meant
I
to
do
be. It
too.
was cool to meet
Have you
you.
been to Barnes& and Noble since they put everything on sale?
I no, I have not. I got kind of sick after I piled so many events up at the end of the
Mhm.
year, and then I paid the price,
Yeah,
and so
and you
I
gotta take
just got
time
better
for that.
now. I need to go
Yeah.
and get because everything's half off, right?
Right,
So
right. Because
because
the
they're switching
particular
locations.
Barnes& and Noble in our area where we both did our book signings
Hmm.
is moving to a new location, so they are selling everything at a discount so they don't have to pack and move so
That's
much
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
I waited in line one day for 3
Wow.
hours to pay,
Yeah.
and it was crazy, but I've got some great stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
the lines aren't so long now because they've sold a lot of stuff, but there's
Yeah. I
still
bet.
tons
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if there's anything good left over. I'll have to
I
go
think
see.
you'll find some stuff. I
Yeah.
was in there just a couple days ago and I found plenty of stuff I still wanted. So,
Cool. Cool.
what's one word that inspires you?
A word.
Mhm.
Hmm. A word that inspires me. Um, I'll give you 3,
Okay.
optimism, enthusiasm, and energy. I think
Oh, and
that
you kinda represent all those. I
I
see
think
them
that
all.
that's I
Yeah.
think that that's a good way to think
Mhm.
about it. Optimism, you believing everything's going to work out, enthusiasm because you love what you do, and energy because you're gonna make it happen.
Yes, I love that. I love that attitude. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michael, for being with me on Fierce Conversations with Toby. And as we've talked about, Michael's most recent publication, Winslow Hoffner's High Sailing Adventures, is released. And Michael returns to the enchanting world of Winslow Hoffner with witty characters, gripping mystery, and fast paced storytelling. Decorated by such myths as the Loch Ness Monster and other awe inspiring legends of cryptozoology.
Yeah.
I love that cryptozoology. I didn't even know such a thing existed.
Oh,
But what I
certainly.
really like is you're writing this fantasy and this adventure stuff, but at its very root, it's based on real a real animal. And I love
Yes.
that because sometimes the fantasy stuff is so far out there that you think,
Mhm.
I can't get there. But if you have a real character, a real animal you're basing it on, I just think that
Yeah.
makes it so much more powerful.
I do. Yeah, I love the research process of these books is really fun. I call it the real world tether. So each story has this root in reality or in real world legends. So if you happen to search any of the creatures that Winslow sees on his voyages, you'll be really excited to see it's like a whole bunch of old newspaper articles detailing other people's supposed alleged encounters with those same
Mhm.
myths.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah, it's a
So
lot of
thanks so much, Michael, for being on with me today. And you can get any of Michael's books at michaelthompsonbooks.com. And I'll put that link in the show notes too. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining me on Fierce Conversations with Toby. Your support and listening means so much to me, and I hope today's conversation makes a difference in your world. If you would like to support this podcast, there are many ways to do so. I found these ways tend to help the most in getting our message out into the world. Number 1, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to or watch this podcast. If you can leave a 5-star rating or a like on this episode on YouTube, that helps even more. And if you leave a comment or a review, that helps the most. The next way you can support Fierce Conversations with Toby is to join our Patreon at patreon.com/fierceconversations. All tiers come with a downloadable digital gratitude journal created by me and membership in a private Facebook group that I also lead. Most importantly, 10% of all proceeds from your subscription will go directly to donating my workbooks to women in prison. Finally, sharing the link to this show with your friends, family, and anyone who wants to listen is appreciated more than I can say. Thank you again for joining me today and supporting this show by listening to it and sharing it with friends. Fierce Conversations is created and hosted by me, Toby Dorr. Produced by Number 3 Productions. The theme song that you're hearing now, Groovin', was composed and arranged by Lisa Plass. Lisa also plays the flute for the theme, with Carolyn Parody on piano and Tony Ventura on bass. Find out more at tobydor.com. This is Fierce Conversations with Toby. Escape your prison.